"You will sleep on my bed," the giant Apache girl said. The lonely famer, best Wild West stories. The lonely farmer, Ethan Cole, had lived for years on the edge of the frontier, where silence felt heavier than the earth he plowed, and where every heartbeat echoed against the emptiness surrounding his cabin. His land gave him food, but not comfort, and for a long time he had grown used to speaking only to his horse or the wind. One late afternoon, while tracking a stray cow deep into the brushland, he heard rustling that did not belong to cattle. Before he could react, a towering Apache woman stepped out from behind a cluster of mesquite trees, moving with an authority that seemed born from centuries of strength. She was nearly a head taller than him, her shoulders broad, her posture fierce, her braids decorated with feathers that swayed as she walked. She did not threaten him, but the sharp intensity in her dark eyes made his breath catch. "You trespassed into my tribe's hunting circle," she said in a voice deep yet steady. Before Ethan could explain, she studied him with surprising curiosity, as if she were deciding what he was made of. She finally motioned for him to follow her, not with force, but with an expectation that felt impossible to refuse. He walked with her through narrow pathways he never knew existed until she brought him to a hidden shelter made of strong wood and decorated with the symbols of her people. She introduced herself as Nami, a guardian warrior of her clan, known not only for her unusual height, but also for her skill as a protector. Ethan tried to apologize for wandering too far, but she raised a hand, silencing him effortlessly. "A man alone in these lands is a danger to himself," she said with a calm that bordered on commanding. She asked him why he lived without companionship, why he chose solitude when the land was filled with dangers that could swallow a man. Without warning, Ethan didn't know how to answer. Loneliness wasn't a choice, but a consequence. She observed him, as though reading pieces of his life simply from his stance. Then unexpectedly, she told him she wanted to see where he lived. She followed him back to his cabin without speaking much, but the silence between them wasn't cold. It felt like she was measuring his character with each step. When they reached his small wooden home, she walked inside without hesitation, scanning everything with an expression halfway between concern and inspection. She sat on the edge of his bed, her imposing presence transforming the small room, and looked up at him in a way that made his throat tighten. "You will sleep on my bed," she said with a tone that left no room for refusal but also held a strange warmth. Ethan was stunned. He had never slept anywhere except his own worn mattress, and he had never imagined a woman, let alone a warrior woman of her stature, would offer him such a gesture. She explained quietly that Apache tradition viewed shelter as a gift of protection, and she believed he needed protection more than he admitted. Ethan felt something shift inside him, something he hadn't felt for years, being seen by another person. She patted the bed with her palm, her gaze softening, just enough to reveal a sliver of gentleness beneath her warrior nature. He tried to argue, but her expression silenced him again. She told him she had lost someone years ago, someone who had lived alone just as he did, and she refused to watch another man walk the same path towards slow sorrow. Without waiting for his reply, she stood, towering over him with an unexpected tenderness. "Tonight you rest like someone who matters," she said. It was the first time in years anyone had spoken to him with such certainty. Ethan felt the loneliness he had built around himself begin to crack as she stepped outside, telling him she would return after gathering herbs for a meal. He watched her walk away, wondering why it felt like the world had suddenly shifted, as if her arrival wasn't an accident at all, but something written long before. Either of them knew it. When Nami returned to the cabin that evening, she carried a small bundle of herbs and a woven pouch filled with ingredients Ethan had never seen, yet their aroma filled the room with a calm that made his chest loosen. She prepared a simple meal with steady hands, each movement deliberate and practiced, and Ethan found himself unable to look away, noticing how her strength balanced with quiet precision. After they ate, she sat across from him, her gaze anchored to his face as though she were searching for something deeper. "A man who lives alone forgets how to speak his heart," she said. Ethan felt a weight shift inside him, realizing how long it had been since he shared anything with another person. Slowly, he told her about losing his parents early, about inheriting the farm too young, about how working the land had replaced his chances at companionship. He expected her to judge him, but instead she listened with a kind of patience he did not know how to receive. Her presence seemed to fill the empty spaces of the cabin he had grown so used to. She then explained that her clan believed strength came not from standing alone, but from the bond between people who trusted each other. Ethan noticed the faint sadness behind her words when she mentioned the person she once lost, someone she could not protect despite her role as guardian. She stood and walked to his bed again, resting her hand on the frame, turning her head slightly as she spoke. "This space is too worn for a man who carries so much," she said in a softer voice. When Ethan hesitated, unsure why she insisted so strongly on him resting on her bed, she stepped closer, close enough that he could see the determination in her expression. "You think you survive because you are strong," she said. "But survival is not living." Her words struck him harder than he expected. She guided him to sit on her bed, and the moment he did, he felt a strange sense of grounding, as though accepting her offer was the first step toward something unknown yet necessary. She sat beside him, their shoulders almost touching, and for the first time he noticed how her intimidating presence held a certain grace. She looked at him as though she had known him longer than the few hours they had spent together. "You will not spend another night alone in fear of your own heart," she said. Ethan lowered his head, realizing she saw through every wall he had built. She told him she would stay until morning and ensure he finally rested without the weight of solitude pressing on him. As the quiet deepened around them, Ethan felt a warmth in his chest that he had forgotten existed. She placed a hand lightly over his, not as a gesture of romance, but of connection, one human reaching out to another. In that touch, Ethan understood that her arrival was not a mistake, but a crossing of paths meant to change something inside him. As they sat in silence, the room no longer felt empty. For the first time in years, Ethan felt the presence of someone who chose to be with him, not out of obligation, but out of conviction. When he finally lay down, guided gently by her, he felt a deep comfort that surprised him. She remained seated at his side, watching over him with a guardian's eyes. Before he drifted into sleep, he heard her whisper, "Tomorrow you will rise, knowing you are not alone anymore." And though he barely understood why she cared, he felt the truth of her words settle in his heart like a long-awaited answer.